Well, guys, here we are back again. I'm Dwayne Dixon with Success of a Nation, and I've got the pleasure of interviewing today, all the way from California, um, my man Justin Smith. He's involved in so many different things, so it's really going to be a treat to interview this brother. He's got a varied background. He's in multifamily investing, so we're definitely going to talk about that. He's he's in construction and development, so I need that in my life, Justin. I just need you to know that, right now, I definitely want to cover that as well. We don't have as many construction and developers on our channel, so it'll definitely be good to talk about some of those things as well. As a matter of fact, listen, I can't wait to dig in. I don't want to drag this out any more than I already have. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you Justin Smith. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good. Well, let's wake it up for the people out there. How you doing? I'm doing great. It's a great morning. You know what? Me, you, and for those that are listening right now, guess what? We all woke up this morning, so we all blessed. So let's make it count. But I'm doing
Absolutely,
great.
absolutely. And with today being my birthday,
Oh,
I
happy
can
birthday, ladies
really,
and gentlemen.
I'm
Give my man a
really
happy
feeling you
birthday.
on that one.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One more trip around the lunar
That's
moon.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. So Justin, first things first, for those who are listening and watching, the one thing I enjoy doing is finding out who you are specifically, who you are as a person. I am very much interested in that, as well as all of the other great things that you do from a business perspective.
Mhm.
So let's just start there, and let the people know exactly who you are. You started out just like, you're a regular guy, despite all the extraordinary things you're doing now, and people, I think, will resonate with that. So let's go there.
Beginnings. Yeah. I was blessed to be born into a family where there were 8 siblings, seven boys, one girl,
Wow.
right? And so we had a large family, but we also learned to live together. We learned to work together. We learned to be somewhat of our own community, if you will, um, and just learn how to work with others. And some of you listeners might have that experience being from a larger family, and then those that might have been with smaller families might have had to had extended families and things like that. But we had a in sort of a insular community. Uh,
Okay.
and from that, we learned a lot of different lessons. My father was very vested in the African American community, very vested in the literary community, in the historical community, and so we were raised reading books on, Langston Hughes and books on Malana Karinga and stories of Biko Trotter and many others, and
Yeah.
also stories of Buddhism, stories
Okay.
of Christianity, stories of the Islamic faith, and that well-rounded sort of environment, that understanding that Oakland was the birthplace for many African American movements, the Black Panther Party,
Absolutely.
the Pan-African movement, sort of spanned across, the Bay Area, and kind of being raised in that environment sort of gives you that spirit of strength, of pride, of
Yes.
of
Yes.
revolution, of we can, and so on. So that's really sort of the soul and nature of who I am
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
where I was raised and how I came to be. But that backdrop really fueled my passion in terms of wanting to be a community builder. Intrinsically, I always wanted to build city blocks.
Mm.
Always wanted to change my neighborhood. I could walk through our neighborhood and go, wow, what's going on over here? What's going on over there? And really be the curious person that wanted to understand, how do we go from vacant lands or broken buildings to skyscrapers, to large complexes, to multi-housing communities. And quite frankly, this was growing up, so I really had no concept for the titles that I'm giving these things, but I just
Right.
saw that in my future and wanted to make that a part of who I am and what I was going to be.
Wow, yeah, man, that's fascinating. So just listening to what you just, elaborated on, is it safe to say that you knew you always wanted to get in construction and be into real estate and that sort of thing, or how exactly did that work?
You know, I think it is safe to say that that is so.
Okay.
For From a very young age, I'll share this story. From a very young age, there was a neighborhood that my brothers and family, folks, we used to just kind of, hang out. And, some of your listeners might go back to the BMX days, when you're riding your bike up and down the streets and you're just kind of hanging out, going to school, doing your thing, right? And there
Yeah.
was a neighborhood, there was a vacant lot and land in my neighborhood, and there was sort of scattered sites here and there, right? And one particular summer, we noticed that the lot up the street from us had someone had put up a fence around it. And when someone put a fence around it, they also started to build a project on that
Yeah.
particular lot. And
Mm,
what came up was a whole series of Victorian buildings, which mirrored some of the Victorian buildings that were in the neighborhood. And I thought that was completely fascinating,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And first off, I was a bit perturbed by the fact that it happened in the blink of an eye. First off, and second off, this was the path where we took going to school. So how dare someone take take our spot where we roll around, Papa Willie, do all goofy
Right.
things going to
Right.
school. But at the same time, I was fascinated with this dinosaur-like equipment, that was just that had all emerged. You heard
Yes.
the noise, you heard the vibrations, you heard this, you heard that, right? And then boom, a new community was born.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was probably middle school or so. And that's when I was truly hooked. That's when I, was like, wow, I don't know what they did, but I want to do that.
Oh,
I
that's
want
great.
I want to be able to transform neighborhoods. And so, I've really just kind of lived my life on this concept of creating and building city blocks.
I love that.
And I just kind of went on this pathway, and then eventually had to understand that you want to create and build city blocks, but you also have to create, build, and finance and have
Right.
capital for city blocks, right?
Right.
And that's a whole nother piece that's sort of happening along this continuum. I originally went to university right here in California for architecture and construction management. And then eventually worked in that, came back to the San Francisco, Oakland area, worked in that field, and then continued on, getting a further master's degree in investment management and real estate finance, just to really kind of continue that understanding, continue that learning. There was this thirst for knowledge, which related to how do these things happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you get to that? And so that's been my pathway, man. And I've
Man,
enjoyed it.
that's fascinating, man. And I love to hear that, because what I've gained from that is you've got all the sides covered. You went back for finance. You had already, had the first part of it covered with the building blocks and so on and so forth. And then the financial component, because that's everything,
Yeah,
especially in this business.
yeah,
In this business. And that's definitely something I want to speak to as well, because, as a Black developer, um, it's not always, as easy as it might be for others to get that financing. You
Yeah.
know, I learned that not only on the, the development side, but also just, in venture capital and areas like that where our numbers are like 1% and sometimes less than 1% in
Hmm.
terms of either providing the funds
Hmm.
or especially when it comes to receiving them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd like to also, speak to that and talk about some of the issues that you may have encountered in that respect.
Yeah, I do think that there are issues that you're going to encounter that are environmental, and I don't mean environmental from a like a nature perspective. I think the course of the development business does have its challenges. So
Yeah.
I don't want to say for those that are listening and for those that understand this world that oh it's simply sort of a cultural or racial thing. There are
Mhm.
challenges in this business.
Yes.
Don't get it wrong. If you are stepping into the role of developer, you can lose your shirt, right?
Yes.
You
I've
can,
known several that have. Yes.
right? But be that as it may, America is what America is in a sense, and there are some challenges on the side of the fence for Black developers, and it's very well documented. I went to an event that was hosted by Spur and also contributed to by the BDF, which is the Black Developer Forum right here in California,
Mm.
uh, about a week or so ago, and many developers were speaking of that, right? And so to that end, I think that we have to understand that dynamic.
Yeah.
We have to be able to leverage relationships. We also have to build projects that make sense, right?
Right.
We have to seek capital partners, investors that might understand not only the challenge of development, but also the challenges that might be specific to African Americans and so on, right?
Yeah.
Align yourself with community groups, align yourself with interests other than maybe that development to help you put these things together. Any
Right.
developer will say, it takes, like they say, it takes a village. Well, yes, it takes a whole team of partners, unless you have one particular capital source that's going to fund, the pre-construction, pre-development of the deal, as well as, fund the acquisition and so on.
Right.
Usually it may be an amalgam, so there's a number of ways to overcome that. You may have one institutional investor, you might have a collection of investors, you might have a syndication, you might have friends and family. You might also go for foreign investors or other related sources. You might pull together several high net worth individuals or several groups of sources. You might even use crowdfunding, right, as a way to sort of spur the development.
Right.
Um, and also if it is affordable, there may be LIHTC or affordable dollars or federal dollars and things like that. Now those have longer tails on them and longer timelines associated with them, but from a capital perspective, they can be used. And so to summarize, I think that you have to be you have to challenge the status quo, but also know you have to get inventive with how you put that capital source and think outside the box. You can't just say,
Yeah.
"Hey, well, I'm just going to go down to the bank and ask for X, Y, and Z." Well,
Right.
it doesn't work that way, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it's a very entrepreneurial pathway, and
Right.
it's a very open perspective with respect to capital and how you pull all that together. And
Yeah.
I'd probably venture to say that no one deal is the same.
Right. Right.
So think about that from a capital perspective. No one set of capital is also going to be the same because the markets change, interest rates change, the dynamic amongst your investors change. Maybe
Sure.
someone wants to invest 2, 3 million, right now, but then when your deal comes to 18 months from now, their environment, uh, uh, their capital sources might be different. So you really need
Right.
to understand all those dynamics.
Yeah, yeah. No, trust me, we've definitely experienced that firsthand. You
Mhm.
know, you think you've got someone
Yep.
on your side, on your team, and
Right.
when it's time, things have changed, and that 5 million is no longer there, and
Yep.
yeah, and don't let that be the one that was going to close the deal.
Right. Right.
That even makes it even more pressing. So no, I certainly
Yeah.
understand and can identify with what you're saying there.
And
Um,
sometimes
mhm,
and sometimes in that case, you know, you may need to have a backup to your backup, right? Because
that is
you may
true.
have sort and this could go with many types of ventures, like whether it's soft tech, or whether technology, or whether it's the entertainment business. Like you may have $1 million source that's going to put up X amount of dollars for the pre-development of your opportunity, and when that comes to pass and you do a capital call, they cannot perform, right?
Right.
Or conditions have changed, and
Right.
now you're stuck in a $750,000 hole, or
Yes.
larger, right?
Yes.
And everything else is ready to go, right? The deal is ready, the city is ready, you got your entitlements, you got your construction permit, and then all of a sudden, hey, you're short $750,000, right? So you have to adjust to those type of things.
Yeah, and I love what you said because I don't think you've said truer words. Back up to the backup.
Right, right.
You know,
You
yeah,
do have to have that.
because you're so you're so ready, and you're feeling as though okay, everything is in alignment. We're good. We're on top of things. And then, as you put it, doesn't always pan out that way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
so absolutely. I appreciate you for raising that point because I think it was a key point for sure. Um, with your background being so varied, I'd like to know sort of what did you get started in first? Because it sort of runs the gamut, but I'd like to know where you got started first.
Yeah, so after some of the educational pieces that I endeavored, which was my foundation, in my mind, my first start was, hey, I need to buy a house. You know, at that point, for many years, sort of throughout the college career, I was thinking I want to buy a house for my mom, right? For my dad, right? Like, buy a house for them, because we come from humble beginnings. We did not own the house that we were born and raised in, which is a circumstance, that many of us face. But as I started to learn, I thought it was important to do that, right? And so my goal was to buy that home, right? And then as I did the first transaction, I start to realize that, if you're really going to build wealth, if you're really going to try and push the envelope, you have to continue to do this.
Yeah,
So my foray into the ownership side of things, or maybe a precursor to the development side of things, was really buying that house, and then in Oakland, and then buying another, and then going after another, and really trying to build you know uh, um, build my understanding of home ownership, build my understanding of buildings, and have a real tactical, hands-on, learn by doing perspective on what it takes, right? Because everyone says, yeah, yeah, go out and buy a house, yeah, you're gonna build wealth and this and that, and but
hmm,
it's not until you do it. It's not until you understand, or it's not until you have an apartment, a small apartment building, do you
right,
realize the work that actually takes to put in. You might be, one glass of wine in on a Sunday night watching the Warriors game, right? And someone calls, at 10 o'clock at night and says, hey, I got an inch of water in my living room because my water heater just burst. Well, if you're a small property, small group, owning that, guess what? You're getting up, you're sobering up,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
putting your dungarees on and your boots on, and you're going out and
yeah.
you're taking care of that circumstance, right?
That's right.
We don't really speak of that. We think, yeah, go buy real estate, be a homeowner, do that. And I agree with all of that, by the way. But
Yes.
but there are trials and tribulations in that whole process. So that's really where I got started, was
Okay.
buying smaller apartment buildings, buying the single family. I did also, over that course of time, to do fix and flips, because you know, in my mind, you do the fix and flips to obtain, the capital and down payment for the next deal. And then certain deals you would hold on to for value and appreciation. Because there's two things you buy for, particularly in the market of single family or in real estate, is you buy for cash flow or you buy for appreciation. And you need to understand what markets those are. On the West Coast, most of our markets are appreciation markets, meaning you may not get a lot of cash flow from that particular building because of the cost of it, but you'll get the appreciation. And so, really understanding that adage, there were certain properties that I would buy, for the cash flow, because, I got them at a low basis, and I knew that I could, obtain and get a good return on it. And very simply, rents over expenses, the income from it would be high, right? So you get cash flow from that. And then there were certain deals that I knew that were sort of what I call close to the rim, where I might have had to do a fix up on it. I might have had to repair some stairs or some walls or things like that. And it might have taken me, out of the cash flow perspective, but I knew I could sell it, maybe at 6 months, 8 months down the line for a good appreciation, right? Because that's the type of market that California is. Yeah. So continuing to do those type of things, and I just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Okay. And you think the world is like great, and this is gravy, until you can't rent out some of your units. If you have and I was on the track of singles and duplexes and that type of thing, but quickly realized that with the duplex, if one person move out, you're at 50% occupancy. Now you may not be making your debt coverage, right? Right. But then start to realize, oh well, if I have a fourplex and one person moves out, okay, I'm at 75% occupancy, right? Yeah. And
you can stomach that a little easier.
You can stomach it a little bit easier, right? But if you're in an area that has, strong rental laws or tenant laws, and you do need to know if your state of your area is landlord friendly or tenant friendly, right? And some of those factors factor into the strategy. And so with that, I start to realize, okay, 75% occupancy, maybe that doesn't mean the same thing. And maybe you have to ride that out for a long period of time, right? So that was kind of the learning ground for this whole thing. And what it eventually led me to was, okay, I could buy a $4 million. I could buy a $4 million 5-unit building in like Oakland or Berkeley. But I could also go to, let's say, Tennessee or Memphis or Texas and buy a $4 million building, and it might be 40 units or 30 units. So
absolutely.
And so then you start to think about, okay, how does your dollar stretch and how do you do that? And so that took me from the 3, the 5, the 10 unit type of buildings that I was doing, where I could drive to. And everyone says, hey, I want to drive and kick the tires. But at some point in time, you have to de-link, and you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and de-link that mental connection between, hey, what your grandparents or your forefathers might have taught you, hey, let your real estate be local. And then you have to, say, okay, well, I want my real estate to be local to who I am, right? In my mind. But if I got to get on a plane and go to these various places, whether it's Texas, whether it's Tennessee, whether it's North Carolina, or wherever, and make my investment, you need to figure out how to do that. You have to make that transition, and that's the transition I made. And so I went from 5 to 10 to 15, small units here and there, to the 80, 100, 200, and so on.
In other cities or states.
In other cities and other states, back to the cash flow versus appreciation. Understand that find the markets that actually have a little bit of both, right? And there are cities out there that you can buy for both appreciation, meaning the value of the property increases over time, and also buy for cash flow, where you will have some residual income from the revenues that come in from that property.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and so, I live in this sort of world of, investing in property, which I call the buy market.
Mhm.
And then on the flip side, on a day-to-day basis, I'm in the build market, right?
Right.
Where I
Right.
build multifamily apartments and communities, or I build affordable housing, or I build student housing, which is actually one of my fortes and one of the areas that I prefer to work in to this day.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely going to touch on that as well. One thing that I want to go back to and hone in on a bit is you talking about cash flow versus appreciation.
Mhm.
Um, I have always been of the mindset that my deals, for the most part, needed to cash flow.
Mhm.
And the reason I say that is because, right now, with the market being the way it is,
Mhm.
I've seen a number of larger than myself,
Mhm.
uh, buying on speculation,
Mhm. Mhm.
buying on the fact that, oh, this is going to continue to rise because look where we are, look
Yep.
where the market is,
Yep.
so on and so forth. And they just filed for bankruptcy because this market has turned.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
interest rates going up, things of that nature. Their values are decreasing,
Yep. Yep.
loans coming due, bridge loans coming
Yep.
due, things of that nature. Now they're foreclosing 5 million. I've seen one up to 250 million,
Yep. Yep.
foreclosing. I'd like you to speak to that.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are market economics that are and market forces that might adjust and change, whether it's interest rates, whether it's a movement of people, population, other type of factors. But I'll say this, and this is what I tend to live by. You make money when you buy. You don't make money when you sell. You make incremental dollars when you sell, but it's an increment of where you start. So you make money when you buy.
Right.
So, and what I mean by that is if you buy a deal and there are economic factors that are in that area, maybe there's a high crime index, you buy on an adjustable mortgage,
Right.
you get, you have a hard time getting an insurance policy, um, you your purchase and sell agreement is too high or the terms are not in your favor.
Those are all the pitfalls.
Those are all the pitfalls going in, and or you don't do your homework on that particular area. You don't
Right.
understand whether it's the hillside, the water side, or the path of progress. Like you don't understand those particular buying adages. And yes, those are quotes and quips and things like that, but you have to understand that because you make money when you buy. And what I mean by that is that you going into a deal is when you lock it in. And so, if you don't have some type of buying strategy that says, hey, you're 80 cents on the dollar on that property, or you're 90 cents on the dollar, or you don't have some cushion in there, then you're going to be subject to the market. The market is going to do what the market does.
That's
The
right.
neighbor's going to do what they do. The community things are going to happen. Interest rates are going to happen. You can't control all of those things. What you can control is how you
Purchase it.
purchase it. And so you need to, and also get this, because I had to learn this. If it doesn't work, if it doesn't make sense, walk away. Don't do the deal.
Right.
Don't do the deal. If
Right.
it doesn't meet and you have to be disciplined. If it doesn't meet your buying criteria, be okay with saying, thank you, sir, madam, we cannot do this deal. I appreciate it. If things change in the future, give me a call.
Right. Right.
And walk away, right? You got to have that walk away point. Many of you
Yeah.
probably learned that in negotiations, right? But have that walk away point. And you don't have to compromise yourself, because you don't have to. If they're having a hardship and you're buying that particular deal, don't put yourself in those shoes,
Yeah.
right? So that's what I would say about sort of buying
Okay.
into deals is really understand and be a one thing that I pride myself on is being a student of the game, right?
Yeah.
And being humble enough to know that I don't know everything. So get a bunch of smart people around you and understand that wisdom, right?
Right.
B, know your markets. Like when you get into a markets, when I speak of specific markets, um, I know enough about that market. I know the 10-year economic growth. I know the census data on. I know the crime data on it. I know the businesses that are moving into the market. I know the populations. I know the neighborhoods. I try to tap into different community groups. I try to tap into some political organization or some understanding. So if you are going to cross that state line and go from, let's say, Texas to Oklahoma or California to Arizona or Seattle, or wherever you're going to go, understand that market and really tap in.
Right. That's all a part of underwriting.
That's all a part of underwriting. That's right. And in some respects, you can't do enough of it, right? You have to
Yeah.
continually understand. But when you're ready to put that deal together, you're going to make money when you buy. There may be circumstances that are out there, but you really have to understand that and be disciplined and go into the deal. And 18 months, 24 months down the road, there may be things that occur that you weren't expecting. But hopefully, if your buying strategies are strong enough, you will work through that. And there's a lot of specifics that we're sort of glossing over, but I'm just saying that at a very high level.
Yeah. No, I understand. I understand. Yeah, man, you definitely dropped some gems there, and I really do appreciate that. It's got me thinking about the fact that you've been in this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the largest deal that you've done? You know, for
Well,
those of us who are still on the 5 million, 10 million page, then we got you sitting here. What speak to that for me?
you know, I'd say it's really in two places. The largest deal I've done on the um, construction or new development side of things is probably a combination between a 14-story tower, student housing tower that I did in Hawaii, associated
Hawaii.
with
Wow.
the University of Hawaii, and or a 284 unit, 1,100 bed student housing complex done here, right here in Northern California. So that's been on the construction side, and quite frankly, those deals are, the size of those deals are commiserate with the market in that particular area, right? And
Right.
so
Right.
they might seem large, but it also deals with the cost of construction in those particular areas.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then on the acquisition or the buy side, been blessed to have purchased the largest was a 360 unit portfolio community, outside of California.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
and we own that particular property, and we have our team in place, and we're managing that. And it's a large deal, and it comes with large problems, right? If your vacancy drops down 10, 20, 30%, well, you feel that and you understand that. So by no means, am I saying, hey, well, I got these big, large deals and this and that. By no means, but just understanding that they come with its complications. There are some benefits from it, obviously, but there are some things that you really have to understand with respect to that. And I had to push myself out there, because we get comfortable, with the $2 and the $1 million deal, and we might get a $100,000 payoff or $200,000 payoff, and those
Right.
things have happened, or whatever the number might be.
Right.
Uh, but but I pride myself in not being, pushing the envelope, being uncomfortable with get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? If my first deal was 119 units, okay, go after the next one. That's going to be 200 units. If my first, deal was, 75 units of new construction, okay, you still living, God gave you oxygen and energy, go after the next one, build something for 200 units and just keep pushing that envelope. So those are the larger type of deals that I've done. And I've done, deals all the way, in between.
That's fascinating, man, and fantastic. I'm so glad you raised that point. I'm letting you know right now that's going to be one of the clips that go out for promotions because stepping outside of your comfort zone is everything.
Yeah.
And I think that was mistake is such a strong word, but if I had to just be completely honest about it, that was certainly a mistake that I made.
Mm-hmm.
And we had the same the similar approach to things, whereas we both started in single family, and I'd buy a duplex here and there, triplex, quadruplex, but for the most part, it was all residential.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
because, everybody was eating well and, the family was on point and we were traveling and we were doing, here it is, X amount of years later. And
Yep.
I've recently pivoted
Mm-hmm.
into
Mm-hmm.
multifamily,
Yeah.
where so I love that you made that point. I think it is so important to do exactly what you said, man. What you said, step outside of
Yep.
your comfort zone and go tackle some bigger projects,
Mm-hmm.
and make it happen that way. So no, I really appreciate you for making that point. Now, clearly, you're not as averse to these bigger situations than one might think. You already chose the most expensive places in the world to build. You said California and Hawaii. Does it? I mean, does it get any more expensive than that? And they were larger, right?
Yeah, it actually does. You'd be surprised. Um, knowing your markets and knowing your sub markets, you could tap into, you can go California, you can go Bay Area, and then you can go San Francisco. And then at that point, you probably
Okay.
get the top of the expense mark, right?
Yeah.
You get
Yeah.
the top of the timeline mark in terms of how long it takes to put those deals together.
Right.
And then you can one step closer to another higher mark is P3, which is public-private partnership. So try doing a public-private partnership in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is in California, which has both public agencies as well as private agencies in the deal,
Oh
plus
my
capital
goodness.
money,
Yeah.
plus being over $400 million in deal size. Like, that's just
Right.
like, it's
Right.
crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. Over in Cupertino or something,
Right,
Cupertino or
right.
something like that. Right.
That's just bizarre and that's crazy talk. But hey, that's where I'm going. I mean, you look. I want to live life to the fullest. I want to continue to challenge, social norms. I want to continue to challenge, capital norms. I want to continue to challenge the building environment. I do want to get to the point where I understand how to build cheaper, how to,
Yeah.
one of the things that I'm studying right now is manufactured and prefabrication of homes and prefabrication of the construction process. So how can we get the cost of building down? Because there's no question that here in America, whether it's California, whether it's Arizona, whether it's any name a state that where there's a shortage of housing. So how can we deal with that? Is there a regulatory piece that we have to address, with the city leaders? Is there something that we can do in the building environment? I recently went to a mass timber conference, to look at, so the mechanics of the building structure. And is there a way to do prefabrication? There's been other, thoughts of, building parts of your building off-site and then bringing and then trucking those onto the buildings and building your units in a modular fashion. Like, where can we really understand how to bring these costs down? So that's another area that I'm studying and definitely looking at for the future.
Yeah, no, I think that's fascinating. I that was one of the first things that I was introduced to, as a matter of fact, the
Mhm. Yeah.
modular homes. Went and visited a uh, pretty large location out in Martinsville, Virginia. I remember
Mhm.
that,
Mhm.
and that's where you essentially have you gotten into that, where you buy the prefabricated stuff and then you move it, and it's a lot faster. I do know that.
Yeah, yeah. I have not gotten into the sort of prefab units, and there's different, like you can buy the box or buy the shipping container and get them converted, and there's different spaces. But
Oh
what I
yeah, that's some new stuff. The shipping containers and all of
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, those are new technology. I haven't gone there yet, and I know, but I do know some places and developers that have. But what
Yeah.
I have done is prefabricate. Like there was this one project, it was we did in Colorado. It was about 75 units or so, and we built the physical framing structures, framing members, which were the walls, the rafters, and so on, off site, and it was about
Hmm.
a block away. And
Okay.
so when we got our horizontal construction, our foundation, all of that done, we basically just brought in, a stack of walls, and that was one unit, stood them up,
Yeah.
secured them structurally, and then brought in another stack. That was the next
Right.
unit, and just
Right.
were able to do that. So we explored, that in that sort of assembly line, prefabrication process. But I would like to get to the point where the entire unit is built off-site. And there are some factories here in California, in Idaho, and other places that are doing that. Bring the entire unit, drop that in, connect it to the site, and then bring the other entire unit and drop that in, maybe in pieces, but drop those things in. I think and that might be a way to deal with some of the expense of
Hmm.
building and development, and it,
Hmm.
it also might deal with some of the time associated with it as well. Um,
Hmm.
the numbers and costs, I think, there's various groups that are out there, including, my team is kind of looking at whether that, we can create some advantages on a cost side. So that's still out there to be dealt with. But I do think that we have to think differently about how we build structures. We have to think differently about how we deliver housing, and where we can deliver housing, and what systems allow us to do that.
Yeah. Where do you see yourself going? Is that the direction that you see yourself going with the prefabs, or is that just another number of options?
I think it's another number of options that
Okay.
are out here, because what I want to do is find more ways to bring down the cost of housing, to bring down the cost of construction, right? And so then I can take what I know, take that particular advantage, and do that in the right areas. And I'm glad you asked the question, where am I going? Where I am going is likely deeper into student housing and deeper into multifamily housing.
Okay.
Now, the next step in that evolution is really looking at historic Black HBCUs, historic Black colleges and universities,
Mm,
because they have been neglected, disenfranchised, whatever you might want to call it, with respect to the growth of their university, because they don't have the housing.
yes.
So I think that if I can, and I have one project, on the drawing board, which is at an HBCU, and then there are others that are around there. So I do want to give back to my community, and take it there, and go to the HBCUs and say, hey, here is a model. Here is a cost advantage. Here is a program that can help you build your university through more enrollment, which is through housing.
Right.
We have a
Right.
program that can help you build that housing. That
Mm,
that's that that's where that's an area that I'm working on, and that's where I want to go.
Oh man, that's fantastic. That's fantastic, and I love that. And then with once you have that model, then you can just duplicate it and continue to go to the other universities and
That's right.
right?
That's right.
Yeah,
It becomes a replicable and scalable model where we can
right,
say, if someone says, hey, we have a university and we need, 500 beds of housing. Okay, well, here's a model that we feel works. We can plop it down. Do you have an acre or 2 acres, or is it a tight urban site where it's a 100 by 200 lot? And okay, we might have to do some configurational changes
right.
to that.
Sure.
But in essence, we're bringing housing to that particular institution, and I'd like to you do that with the HBCUs and then other smaller institution or even other larger institution. We won't
Right.
be agnostic to size.
Right.
We will be agnostic to size, but hey, let's take this model to different places. I've built over 1,500 units of student housing in the last 10 years in 4 different states. So I've had that experience to see, okay, here's what works and here's what doesn't work. Here's
Yeah.
what we need to change and what we need to modify or keep as a base process.
Okay. Why student housing? Just out
You
of
know,
curiosity. I mean, there's so much out there, but
mhm.
you honed in on student housing. What were some of the advantages that you saw that that encouraged that move?
Student housing, personally, I feel like the youth are our future, right?
Mm.
That's sort of a sort of innate, or maybe just something that I believe in, right? I do believe in that housing type, um, because it's needed. And
Yeah.
it's also a market driven approach, right? I have a list of over 25 different universities that I know specifically are underhoused, can only house up to maybe 75% of their student base.
Mm.
It's a market driven, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So that's the second thing. The third thing is it's formulaic, and I understand the formula, and I understand the process, and I can replicate that model at the various places. There are
Okay.
certain typographies or demographics of the area that we have to deal with. But if someone's called right now and said, hey, I have X land base and we need 300 units, I could say, okay, when do you need them? 24 months or 18 months? Let's go to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And feel confident that I can deliver on that. And then the last piece of it is, I like to, I think, like I said, children are our future, right? And I just like to see them happy. I just like to, to see that next generation, prosper and do well. And if they have a clean new roof over their head,
Yeah.
and a comfortable place to stay, they can explore and go after their dreams. So I think
Yeah. Yeah.
student housing solves sort of that intrinsic, solves some of that personal
Right.
fulfillment,
Right.
as well
Sure.
as business fulfillment.
Do you build and then sell, or do you build and now they're essentially paying you? How does that part of it work?
It depends on the arrangement and the partnership.
Okay.
In some cases, in the past, we've built and sold.
Okay.
In some cases, we built for a specific university. And then we have projects right now on the books where it's part of our portfolio. So we
Yeah.
own the land, we'll build there, and we're building for that generational wealth so that we can pass it on to our children
There you go.
and keep it in the family, if you will. So um, that's sort of the next frontier, is build this next series of projects, for our account and for our partners and for those that are a part of the deal.
No, no, that's great, man. I simply asked that question because I thought about this once in a lifetime incident
Mhm.
called COVID,
Mhm.
where everyone went back home. There was no students on campus.
That's right.
And I was just thinking, of the ramifications behind, something like that. So that's what caused me to ask. But no, I got you though. I got
Yeah,
you.
but what's interesting about that is that was that was a there's a geographical occurrence with respect to COVID and how it affected student housing. And what I
Mm.
mean by that is there's certain universities and areas on both the far east and the far west coast that students moved away and didn't come back. And then there are certain states and communities, maybe in the Midwest, maybe in the Southeast, that students temporarily went home, but immediately came back. Not only that, during that point in time, those universities actually grew in enrollment, grew in numbers.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
It's not as anecdotal, or it wasn't all across the board that students went away. No,
Okay.
there are certain places that were the exact opposite, and they actually grew. There are
Oh
certain
wow.
universities,
Okay.
some of the smaller universities, in certain places were likely hurt and maybe still hurting from the pandemic. But then there are some that are appreciated very well because
So
of
they
it.
flourished, huh?
Oh,
Okay.
they flourished, and then also think about this. For those that I mean, let's step into the living room of many parents out there. You got an 18-year-old, 18 and 19-year-old. They go off to college and they feel that 1 year at college, and then COVID says go home. Do you think they really want to stay there? Like, even if they have to pay rent, like they just want to come home, raid your Costco shelves, and then get the heck out of there, right? So.
That's so true.
A lot of
Wash
kids,
clothes long enough to wash clothes and eat, you know.
wash clothes, eat, daddy, mommy, let me hit that wallet real quick. I'm out of here, right?
That is
So,
so true.
they wanted to go back too.
No, I get it. I get it. I get it for sure. For sure. Yeah, man, that is fantastic. Something that's crossed my mind. I have to ask this since I got the man here, the developer here. A partner of mine, uh, we have about 20 or so acres.
Mhm.
And I'm always trying to mitigate risk. My question to you is, for someone in my position, who, on a large scale development, I have never really been a part of that. My background has always been, again, single family and now multifamily, but certainly never developing. What steps would you take if you were someone like myself? Just speaking to I don't want to say a lay person, but hell, a lay person. What steps would you take with someone like that, getting started in development and going from there?
You mentioned something that's very key, and the first thing, and I appreciate that question. But you mentioned something that is a very good indication for you, and that is managing your risk, right?
Oh
Because
yeah,
that's really that's really what it is all about. Is if you're embarking on a 20-acre mixed use multi-building type of site, you really need to look at it from a risk perspective.
absolutely.
And so I think that assumption will carry you far, and is very noble, right? So, so
And one other thing I want to make mention of, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but there is a caveat that I think plays a significant part. One of the other reasons why I'm approaching it, rather prudently, is because it's also in a fairly rural area.
Mhm,
Okay,
mhm,
so that
mhm.
area is not really developed like the areas I'm accustomed to investing in.
Right,
So
right.
that's another, sticking point for me as well. And I just wanted to throw that out there because I know um, where it's located could make the difference of everything you were about to speak to. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to say that part first, and then run. I'm taking notes, man.
Man, hey, look. It sounds like you're a seasoned pro already. I mean, you've given some of the factors that I was going to speak to. I mean, you're already there. Understand and analyze your risks. So you need to know what those risks are. Risk number one, and I'm just sort of off the top of my head, but risk number one is, what is your market, right? What is your market? Where is this particular project? How far is it from other markets? Is there a buying population? Is it a destination place? Is it a travel place? Who wants to live there? Who does live there? Who will move there? Who's living there in the future? Who's living there now? And when you find out who's living there, then what are their statistics? What are their income statistics? What are their level of folks with zero education to 2-year, 4-year college education? What is the what do you call it, the discretionary income of that particular area? What are the politics of that area? What are your demographic breakdown of that area? Do people congregate in that area? Do they, is there already a town center or a town circle, or is this 20 acre going to be that new destination, right? So understanding that market and all these particular factors will tell you to some extent what it is that you should be building. And then the second thing is the feasibility of it. What's the cost of doing this particular construction? What's the engineering feasibility of it? Does it have road issues? Does it have water issues? Does it have water going to the site? Does it have underground issues? Are there any hazmat land issues? Does it have streets, street lights, infrastructure? Does the city or the county want to invest in infrastructure, streets, lights, or be a partner with you? Do you have the cost to purchase the land? If it's already purchased, well, then the folks that are part of it, do they have the credit worthiness, the net worth, the liquidity, the balance sheet, the support, and the capital to do this particular project? All those feasibility type of, is this financially possible?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
That kind of fits in this feasibility bucket. Um, and then also associated with that, what's the regulatory environment? What's the city council? What's the county? What's the rules? What's the zoning? What does the state say about these particular areas? What's the general plan? For that particular area? What does the city council see for that? Do they see that area as becoming a future wetlands or a future, outdoor park area? Or do they see that as the next town center? Or is there some alignment with their interests? And then you look at the state. Okay, does the state plan to put a road or a railway or a freeway right through that particular area in
oh
the
boy,
future? Right. And
yeah, yeah,
so when you start kind of looking at the regulatory, the city, and the sort of administrative guidelines or path around that, because and all the things that I'm saying is all published in reports. So you
yeah,
can find that particular zip code, find that particular area, and get information on the market, get information on feasibility, get information on the general plan, get information on the regulatory environment, get information from the state. And once you start to really gather all this information, and by the way, this stuff may take 12 to 18 months or whatever. And if you're a developer, you're doing this on your own dime.
yeah,
You're
that
doing the
part.
fact finding to make sure that, yes, I might have spent $500,000 on paper, but it saved me from spending $5 million on a failed project. Kind of look at it
Yeah,
from that perspective. Now, that
yeah.
500K
Mm,
out of your own pocket or your partner's pocket may hurt, but it is answering those questions. It is
right.
answering the question that you have in your mind. Is this 20-acre development a worthwhile objective? And you're going to need
Yeah,
to spend some time to answer those questions, and the market, the demographics, the feasibility, the regulatory environment, the capital needed, the capital that wants to be invested in that area, are all things that you have to answer. And And there are signals, there's information, and there's reports that will help guide you in that direction. Some of my clients, come to me with that same question.
Yeah.
And they'll say, hey, I have an acre plot of land. What should I do with it? Should I do X, Y, and Z? And we work with them to go through some of those same questions and components and work and get some of those things answered. Now, and after the result of that, if that is a yes, then we move forward. If that is a no, then I advise them, hey, here's a no and here's why. And here's a no, but here's how we might be able to work our way into that circumstance, right? And so, and then there's, I don't know if I mentioned this, but then there's an environmental effect associated with that. Like, is there underground, is there groundwater? Is there, earth shifts? Are there earthquakes? Is it in a seismic friendly zone? Are there tornadoes and other environmental effects that might affect that particular site? So, but that being said, that's sort of in my mind, the categories of areas that you need to assess to make sure that that 20-acre site is feasible. Now, you're only making sure that it is feasible. That does not guarantee it being assessed. It just means you've done your homework and you've analyzed that site. And then once you start designing it, then that's a whole nother bucket of risk. That's just the analysis and feasibility of the project. Then there's design and pre-entitlement.
All right, well, thanks, man.
Construction.
Thank you, because you just caused me to just go back to the apartment building, because that thing, you spoke for 20 minutes and you never got to the actual structure.
I never got to the structure.
It was all feasibility.
It's all paper. Hey, look, if you're going to step
into
the development world, I tell people this. Look, if you want to be a developer, be ready to spend $1 million on paper. You're going to buy a big rack of paper. That paper's going to tell you something. But if you want to be a developer, be ready to spend $1 million on paper.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a building.
Well, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And it's not a game. Not a game.
Oh, it's definitely not a game. $1 million on paper is, yeah. You're definitely in the big leagues for sure. No, that's good stuff, man. You gave me way more than I even bargained for on that one. I started to hit your Patreon or something and send you some money on that one, because that was crazy. Okay. Well, listen. With that being said, as you could see, I could keep you here all day, because you're such a wealth of information. And I'm loving every minute of it, to say the least. In conclusion, is there any words of wisdom are there any words of wisdom that you could give us? Not that you haven't already, but that you could give maybe the listeners, whether it be multifamily or developing, or just business for that matter. What might you enlighten us with?
Well, I'll actually say it like this, and it probably encompasses business, life, passion, and pursuit of happiness and wealth. And that's live life learning, listening, and living. And really just continue to hone your strengths and live through your experiences and live through your mistakes with your lessons learned and build on that. Everyone has their own different path, and everyone has their own different environment. So I can't even sit here and suggest, hey, well, here's what you should do. But living, learning, and listening, right? I think that's an important thing. And then on the business side of it, know your market, know your feasibility, know your costs, and know your risks, right? Because like I said earlier, every deal is different.
Yeah.
Now, if individuals out there have a deal and they want to talk through that, or they want some guidance on that, then we can help in that. We do have an advisory practice where we help people understand a particular deal, or if persons have a deal and it's mature to a certain level, and you're looking for, partners or relationships or things like that, then we can also help with that as well.
Okay.
That's on a deal by deal basis. And like I said, I do like student housing, so that's something that I'm, definitely interested in. So if there, if some of your listeners have, deals that are related to that, feel free to, give me a call, right? And let's see if we can do business there. In terms of the multifamily developments, that's also something in my wheelhouse. So, but just know, we're intentional. We live life well, and we live life happy, and we want to do good things in the future.
Beautiful way to close out, brother. I love that, Justin. Well, this explains why he's here today, because he just laid it all out, and now you can see why I was so excited to just have a conversation with him. And it's definitely been one that I will continue to think about and rewind this video and podcast, because I'm learning from it just as much as the next person is. So I sincerely appreciate you for that. How can people get in touch with you? You sort of touched on it, so let's go there. How might they, get in touch with you?
I'd say the best way is through email, and that is info@realequity.com. My website is Real Equity. That's currently where we're fielding questions and that type of thing, and you can reach us through that. And that's REL Equity.
Okay.
No A in that, just Real Equity, one word.
There you go.
That's where you can reach us.com.
Okay. Okay. Well, that sounds fantastic. So everyone's got that. We'll also be sure to put that in the notes so that people will have that. Real Equity, REL Equity.com. And you'll be able to get all the sage information that you could shake a stick at. And he's the real deal. So, and I think you've seen that firsthand today. So, Justin, on that note, I definitely appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure. Uh, the gems just kept going and going. So thank you for enlightening us with all of that wisdom that you had for us today. I greatly appreciate you for it, honestly.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
on that note, I guess we'll close out. I'm Dwayne Dixon with Success of a Nation. This is none other than Justin Smith. And on that note, you guys take care.